Hello and welcome back to the Alejandro Hernandez podcast, where today we'll be discussing a recap of the entire wildcard weekend. And I want to open with the Chargers and Texans game. What a game that was. One that I was totally wrong about. Probably the one game that I pretty much whiffed on the entire weekend. This game, for the entire first half, it was pretty much going the way that I thought it would, with the Chargers defense dominating. The Chargers, they weren't really getting the run game going, but I felt like with a lead they would eventually. But they completely abandoned it pretty much after the first quarter when it wasn't getting going. And man, that Texans defense caught me by surprise. And this game was going the Chargers' way up until one pivotal play, and that was the 3rd and 16 play that CJ Stroud made with 2:26 left in the third quarter. In the second quarter, I stood at my screen and watched in awe as the snap went over his head. He has to run back into his own end zone, scramble to the right sideline, and throws an absolute bomb to Xavier Hutchinson for a 40-yard gain. That just completely flipped the game on its head. And from that point on, the Chargers just never seemed to recover any sort of momentum. And CJ, the play he made, only about 6 to 7 quarterbacks in this league can make that play. I mean, that's what special quarterbacks do. When you think that their team is dead in the water, they just make one play that completely shifts the momentum, and CJ made that play. And I feel like what I got right about this game was the Ladd McConkey performance. He was absolutely spectacular. 9 catches, 197 yards, and a touchdown. He was their entire offense. 197 of Herbert's 242 yards went to just Ladd McConkey, which was just crazy. And Quentin Johnston did indeed get locked up by Derek Stingley, a corner that I knew about, Kamari Lassiter. I believe he went to Alabama. He played spectacular. He had that interception on the crossbody throw from Justin Herbert. He was great in this game. Another Texan slot cornerback had a pick 6 off a horrible Justin Herbert throw. What I got wrong? I mean, Justin Herbert, playoff choker, to put it simply. I knew he had choked that game at Jacksonville. I think it was 2 years ago. But I pretty much put the blame on that game on the former head coach of the Chargers, Brandon Staley, of just choking that game away, allowing pretty much 30 unanswered points to the Jags. But now looking back on it, it could be put on Justin Herbert just simply not living up to the moment. And he's been a great regular season quarterback. What I thought going into this game was that he was going to take care of the football, since he only had 3 interceptions the entire season. But he ended up having 4 in just one game when he went the entire 17-game season with only throwing 3, which was just crazy. He crumbled. And another factor of this game that I thought the Chargers had an advantage was their 2 tackles, Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt, against Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson. But they got absolutely mauled. Will Anderson, I knew he was a great player, but man, he pretty much took over this game all by himself. Felt like every time I was watching the game, he just was in their backfield instantly, causing havoc. I already mentioned Derek Stingley and Kamari Lassiter just playing an absolutely excellent game. And CJ, although he had that horrible interception in the first half, they fumbled on their opening play of scrimmage. They fumbled again in the third quarter. CJ just never seemed to blink, never seemed to get discouraged. Meanwhile, Herbert crumbled. CJ actually responded well to adversity, which I probably should have seen coming, but given the way the Texans had played all season, I thought that once they got down early, there was no coming back. But CJ made a spectacular play, and the Texans ran away with it from that point on. And now they'll head to Kansas City for the divisional round. And my main takeaway from this game was that CJ Stroud, already a better quarterback than Justin Herbert ever was. He has 2 playoff wins to Herbert's 0. And yeah, CJ outplayed him in this game. And the Chargers, I believe they're like another offseason or 2 away from being true contenders in the AFC. Their offense is Ladd McConkey or bust. They probably should add another wide receiver, upgrade the interior offensive line. The defense, I have no complaints with the defense. Maybe upgrade the linebacking core and address maybe the back end of the defense. But other than that, the Chargers just need to surround Herbert with more weapons. It's not to excuse his performance. His performance was awful, but he also needs other weapons to throw to. It can't just be Ladd McConkey being the only weapon in the offense. And DeMeco Ryans, I mean, you could see his energy, the way the Texans came out ready to play this game. Not saying that Jim Harbaugh didn't have his team ready to come out and play, but DeMeco Ryans, just the energy, the explosiveness, the aggressiveness that his defense played with, caught me by surprise, and I'd say he's a top 10 head coach in this league already. In his first 2 seasons, already getting 2 playoff wins under his belt and 2 division championships under his belt. And yeah, the Texans' future is very bright. Now moving on to the Steelers-Ravens Saturday night game. The game pretty much went exactly how I thought it would. Ravens covered the 9.5 easily. They went up 21-0 to end the first half. Just an absolutely dominant performance by Lamar and Derrick Henry, as I thought would happen. I didn't expect 299 yards. I mean, Pittsburgh didn't really put up a fight in that first half. But even though they came roaring back in the second with 2 Russell Wilson deep balls, it just never felt like this game was close at all. The Ravens didn't even feel the need to pass the ball without Zay Flowers. They just said, we're going to run it down your throat, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. They had a drive in the second quarter where they ran the ball 13 plays in that drive and didn't pass the ball once. And they ended up getting in the end zone anyway. Just dominant by the Ravens. Bully football. In a historic rivalry, the Steelers just didn't live up to their end of the bargain on defense. You can put that on Mike Tomlin. Russ got a lot of blame for this game as well. Like I said in my prediction video, he's going to be the scapegoat. I don't think Russ played particularly bad in this game. He just doesn't have much to work with. Mike Williams being your wide receiver 2 in 2025 just isn't going to cut it in today's league. George Pickens did have a bounce-back game, but he didn't really show up till the second half. This game was over by the second quarter. Ravens ran away with it. And Lamar has temporarily silenced his playoff doubters for the time being. He's now 3-4 in the playoffs. But it's not really going to matter up until he beats the Josh Allens, the Joe Burrows, the Patrick Mahomes. That is going to be his signature moment, and he's going to get that this weekend when he goes to Buffalo. And we'll see how he performs in that game. But as of right now, he's starting to separate himself from that playoff choker narrative. And I'm happy for him for doing that. He's a great regular season player, but he has to prove it come playoff time. And this time around, he lived up to it, passing for 2 touchdowns, took care of the ball, ran the ball excellently. And yeah, really much nothing else to talk about from this game other than the fact that the Steelers are going to have a very, very long offseason with a ton of decisions to make. Whether they retain Mike Tomlin, Russell Wilson being a free agent, what they're going to do with Justin Fields, Najee Harris now entering free agency. It's a lot of big decisions they have to make as a franchise moving forward. And whether they keep Tomlin or not, it's going to change the trajectory of their franchise going forward. Now moving on to Broncos at Bills. I had the Broncos covering the spread in this game in a high-scoring game. I thought that both offenses would play great, considering that the Broncos defense, even though they've been great statistically all season, they struggled against the top quarterbacks in the league, whether it was Lamar earlier in the season, Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow. They allowed some points in those games, so I thought that the Bills would cruise to 30-plus points in this game, and they did. But I also thought that the Bills' defense left a lot to be desired out in the field, but after that opening drive, they locked everything down in that Denver offense. I thought that Sean Payton would come out with a good script for Bo Nix, and on that opening drive, it worked. They found the deep ball to Troy Franklin, and from that point on, the Denver offense just stymied. Absolutely nothing happened from that point on. So that's why I had the Broncos getting the backdoor cover in a high-scoring game, but their offense just didn't live up to their end of the bargain. The Bills, however, Josh Allen put on his Superman cape on that 4th and 1. The Denver defense had absolutely every route covered on that play, but he bought time. You could see him going like this to his running back to angle him back to the middle of the field and just threw an absolute dime. You can't defend that. Better offense is always going to beat great defense, and that play was a perfect example of it. You can see Vance Joseph just in absolute awe of what he had just seen because he called the perfect play defensively, but you can't defend a perfect pass the way Josh Allen threw that ball to Ty Johnson. And yeah, Josh Allen is just absolutely spectacular. I still think the Bills' defense is going to be a concern moving forward once they play Lamar, and if they get past Lamar, they'll have to play either Patrick or CJ Stroud. And man, the Bills' defense in this game, although they played well, I still think I have concerns moving forward on the back end of that defense, which was exploited on that deep ball to Troy Franklin. Their run game has gotten better due to the return of Matt Milano. They have Terrell Bernard. They have players on their defensive line and then their linebacking core. Let's see if Sean McDermott can make adjustments after that. They got walloped at Baltimore in that first game. Let's see how they come out defensively. I'm intrigued to see how they defend Derrick Henry. And let's see if Zay Flowers is also back for Baltimore. But one element that took me by surprise in this game was the ability of the Bills to run the football with James Cook. He was great in this game, rushing for over 100 yards. He's been running the ball well all season, but in the bigger games against Baltimore, against Kansas City, he really couldn't get going at all. So I want to see how he comes out at home against Baltimore. But overall, dominant Bills win. And I expected them to win this game and move on. I just thought the Denver offense would balance things out, keep it close, but Bo Nix offered nothing after that first drive. Now moving on to the Packers at Eagles game. Again, this game went pretty much exactly how I thought it would. The Eagles dominating on defense and in the run game, which they did. Saquon Barkley comfortably rushing for over 100 yards, 119 on the dot with 25 carries. Didn't find the end zone. He could have on that last play of the game, but he decided to slide. He could have ended with 170 yards and a touchdown if he took it all the way, but still a dominant Saquon Barkley performance. He got the yardage even without breaking the big one. He had multiple runs of 17 yards, 19, 15. He was cutting through that Packers defense. And despite Jalen Hurts not being particularly sharp coming back from that concussion, the Eagles were still able to get the job done. And they're lucky that the Packers are lucky that their defense came to play, especially in the secondary, because if not, this game could have gotten very ugly. I thought that Jordan Love would struggle in this game without Christian Watson, but on top of losing Christian Watson, he also lost Romeo Doubs to a concussion and Jaden Reed to a shoulder injury in the second half of this game. And I mean, Dontavian Wicks is your wide receiver one, just isn't going to get the job done. Jordan Love really had nowhere to go with the football. There was one play in the second quarter where he tried to force one down the sideline to Dontavian Wicks in one-on-one coverage, and Darius Slay made him pay for that mistake. You just can't test this Eagles secondary with Darius Slay, Cooper DeJean, and Quinyon Mitchell. Those are probably the best cornerback room in the NFL, and they're young. Quinyon and Cooper DeJean are both rookies that the Eagles drafted. You got to give credit to Howie Roseman. He always knows how to build an excellent roster, and he once again knocked the draft out of the park. Nolan Smith had a great game. Jalen Carter was causing havoc. Just the Eagles' defense overall just smothered the Packers' offense. And yeah, Jordan Love left a lot to be desired in a big game. And yeah, like I said, the Packers' defense keeping this game close. It could have gotten very ugly if they hadn't kept it close. Packers were lucky that this was only a 12-point loss. It could have been a 20-plus point loss if Jalen Hurts was able to get the pass game going along with Saquon Barkley running the football. But yeah, the Eagles won this game comfortably like I thought they would. Now moving on to the Commanders at the Buccaneers. And man, I was hyped watching this game. I predicted Jaden Daniels would go out and win the football game late, and he did just that. You couldn't have nailed this prediction any better than I did. I said whoever got the ball last in this game would win the game, and Jaden Daniels got the ball with 4.5 minutes left. Now, usually teams score too early or they end up stalling out on third down. But Dan Quinn had all the confidence in the world in Jaden Daniels throughout the game. He went on fourth down 5 separate times in this game, and they went 3 for 5 on fourth down. And Jaden Daniels, on gotta have it third down, just kept up making play after play after play after play when his team needed him. And Tampa Bay, they're offensively, they just had no time of possession. They didn't have the ball. I think Baker went 15 of 18, only 18 pass attempts for Baker Mayfield, who finished second in the league in touchdowns and third in passing. He just never got the ball because the Commanders kept converting third downs, converting fourth downs, extending drives. I remember the Commanders chewed up about 9 minutes off the clock in just a second quarter drive when they got the Buccaneers pinned them deep on a punt, and Jaden Daniels took his team 95 yards and scored a touchdown. Just time of possession was in favor of Washington in this game. And Jaden Daniels had no run game. Brian Robinson was locked up the entire game because of Vita Vea, Kalijah Kancey. Buccaneers have players on that defensive line, and they showed up. They were chasing Daniels all over the field. His running ability came up clutch in this game on third downs, especially on that last one. I was thinking out loud, like, hey, like on this third down to ice the game so that the Buccaneers couldn't get the ball back late, put the ball in the hands of Jaden Daniels on a run play, and that's exactly what they did. Kalijah Kancey got in the backfield, he stiff-armed him off and ran for the first down. He looked inevitable. It was sort of that Patrick Mahomes feeling you get in late in ball games where you know he's going to make the play to win the game. I just had no doubt that Jaden was going to make the right decision in the right moment, and he did it time and time again. I wouldn't really put this loss on Baker Mayfield, although that fumble was bad in their own territory, but I put that on the center. The center, I believe it was a run play to Bucky Irving where he snapped the ball too early and Baker wasn't expecting the snap. Yet the rookie center snapped it early and Baker, there was just a miscommunication on that handoff and the Commanders stuffed a third down play, a big third down play late in the game. And then the fumble was just tragic for the Buccaneers. And Jaden Daniels capitalized off that short field. They had just previously messed up on a fourth down. He threw an incomplete pass, and then they went for it again on fourth down, and then Jaden made the throw to Terry McLaurin. Just an absolutely outstanding game. This is unprecedented to have a rookie quarterback be so composed in chaos on third downs, on fourth downs, teams blitzing him. Todd Bowles was blitzing him all night, and he was just responding. Diami Brown was a breakout player in this game, catching 5 balls for 89 yards and the touchdown. He's been pretty much a non-factor all season, but in this game he came up clutch when the Commanders needed him to make plays. And it was by far the most exciting game to watch this entire weekend. It was the closest game out of all of them. And I'm excited to be on the right side of it. I was on the Jaden Daniels bandwagon. Now everyone's hopping on it. I was on it before. And just a spectacular performance by Jaden Daniels. And the Commanders are going to have their hands full going to Detroit for the divisional round. Now, on to the last game of the weekend. Rams hosting the Minnesota Vikings. I had the Rams winning a close game, whether it was low scoring or high scoring, but Sam Darnold had other plans. I expected Matt Stafford to come out sharp in this game, which he did. He went a surgical 6 of 6 for 64 yards and a touchdown on the very opening drive. He had 124 yards after the first quarter. He was just, that game script that Sean McVay came out with his offense just was clinical. However, a big injury for the Rams happened in this game. Tyler Higbee, who had 5 catches for 50 yards on the first quarter of the game, exited that game and never returned. So he was playing a big factor in that Rams passing game, and he exited. But it didn't seem to affect the Rams offense at all. But the main story of this game was the Rams defensive line. I knew that they'd come out in this game and put pressure on Sam Darnold like they did in that first matchup. But to the extent that they did it was just caught me by surprise. Jared Verse didn't even have a sack in this game. It was Kobe Turner, Bryce Young, Brandon Fisk, Akello Witherspoon coming on nickel blitzes. That Rams defensive coordinator deserves a lot of credit for that game plan he put together to just pick Sam Darnold apart and make him panic. And that's exactly what he did. Some of the blame could go to the Vikings offensive line. Some of the blame could go to Kevin O'Connell's play calling. But most of it has to go on Sam Darnold. He just wouldn't get rid of the ball. It's like he didn't know he could throw away the ball. He was running backwards, taking sacks. I saw a stat that Sam Darnold, the most lost sack yardage in playoff history. Playoff history. He lost 81 yards on sacks. Just running backwards, panicking, not getting rid of the football, thinking that he's like Lamar Jackson. He can just spin out of these tacklers coming at him. They just wrapped him up every single time. He tried to play hero ball in that strip sack, and they took it to the house. Man, just what a disappointing end to the Vikings season. And I knew the Rams' playoff experience would give them the edge in this matchup, and it did with Sean McVay, Matt Stafford. They were sharp, and I expect them to be sharp going into that Philadelphia matchup next weekend. And yeah, the Rams won this game convincingly. It took me by surprise as I thought the Vikings would at least keep up with them, but Sam Darnold just absolutely played horrible. And yeah, that is it for the 6 games of this wildcard weekend. All in all, it was a very successful weekend as I went 5-1 straight up. The only loss being the Chargers. I had the Chargers winning, but the rest of the 5 teams I had winning won. The Chargers were the one team that lost on the road at Houston. And I went 4-2 against the spread. My 2 losses being the Broncos plus 8.5 at Buffalo and the Chargers negative 2.5 at Houston. But the rest, pretty sharp predictions. My overall takeaway from this weekend was the better coach and the better quarterback on each team won the game. In the first matchup, D'Amico Ryan, CJ Stroud got the better of Justin Herbert and Jim Harbaugh. Second matchup, John Harbaugh, Lamar Jackson over Russell Wilson, Mike Tomlin. The third matchup, Sean McDermott, Josh Allen over Sean Payton and Bo Nix. The fourth game, Nick Sirianni, Jalen Hurts over Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love. The 5th game, Dan Quinn, Jaden Daniels over Todd Bowles and Baker Mayfield. And the last one, Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford over Sam Darnold and Kevin O'Connell. Now, looking back at it, it may seem like no-brainers, but the Texans were underdogs, the Commanders were underdogs, the Rams were underdogs. yet having the better coach and the better quarterback, they were still underdogs due to the other teams having the better rosters. And that may be the case in the divisional round, like for, say, the Eagles having a far better roster than the Rams. But we'll see if that game ends up being close. Right now, it's a 6.5-point spread. I think it's going to be way closer than that. We'll see. You guys will see who I have in my divisional round predictions, which will be coming out very soon. But until then, I'll see you guys next time.